This is WFYI News Now. It's September 19th, and I'm Abrianna Herron. On today's show, former U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg speaks at a rally against a redistricting push in Indiana. Ball State University fires an employee after online comments she made about the Charlie Kirk shooting. And this Indianapolis charter school is celebrated for academics, but one family says their child with disabilities keeps getting suspended and falling behind.
Why is he getting in trouble for what ADHD looks like?
Those stories coming up, but first. Citizens Energy Group is suing the Indianapolis Housing Agency, claiming the agency owes them hundreds of thousands of dollars in utility service payments. The lawsuit filed by the city of Indianapolis on behalf of Citizens Energy Group accuses IHA of breach of contract. It claims IHA has not paid gas, water, and sewer utility services at Laurelwood and Rowney Terrace apartments. Some bills date back to 2024, with a total unpaid balance of more than $208,000. According to court documents. Citizens Energy seeks payment and asks the court to appoint a receiver to take over operations at the properties until the debt is repaid. IHA has been under federal receivership since 2024 after years of mismanagement. In May, IHA CEO Yvonne Bean said the agency would sell several of its multifamily properties, including Laurelwood and Rowney apartments. IHA declined to comment. In a statement, Citizens Energy says it chose to file the lawsuit rather than shut off utilities at the properties, stating it would, quote, have directly impacted the residents. Former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg urged hundreds of Hoosiers at a Statehouse rally Thursday to hold Republicans accountable if they redrew the state's congressional map. Brandon Smith reports state Republican lawmakers appear likely to redraw congressional district lines this year to gain more seats for the GOP.
Buttigieg, a former South Bend mayor, came home to Indiana to urge citizens to talk to their neighbors and push state lawmakers not to redistrict. Buttigieg says rather than change their unpopular policies, national Republicans are trying to change district maps.
They know that on a fair map, if they get caught taking all the money they took out of Medicaid and giving it to tax cuts for billionaires, they will lose.
Governor Mike Braun this week said there could be negative consequences from the Trump administration if Indiana doesn't redraw its map. Democratic Senator Andrea Hunley says that shouldn't matter.
Governor Mike Braun should be less worried about relationships with politicians out in D.C. and should be more concerned with making life better for Hoosiers.
Braun also said a special session for redistricting would probably happen in November. I'm Brandon Smith at the Statehouse.
Ball State University has fired an employee after online comments she made about the Charlie Kirk shooting were highlighted by the state's attorney general. Suzanne Swerk was director of health promotion and advocacy at Ball State. A post on her personal Facebook page with privacy restrictions was shared online by the Indiana Attorney General, Todd Rokita, as an example of, as he put it, quote, so many hateful people exposing themselves. Swerk wrote that Kirk's death is a tragedy, but she continued that his death, quote, is a reflection of the violence, fear, and hatred he sowed, end quote. On Wednesday, a statement from Ball State University announced Swerk's firing. It said her post, quote, caused significant disruption to the university and was inconsistent with her leadership position. Ball State's statement cited a federal appeals court case that it says backs up her firing. Indiana is also a so-called employment at will work state. The Indiana Department of Labor says employees not part of the collective bargaining agreement can be fired for no stated reason. Ball State also says it is still investigating a post by a second employee. And for our final story today, charter school supporters point to the Paramount network as an example of how schools can successfully serve students from low-income families and children of color, and they want other schools to emulate their approach. But Paramount doesn't just have high test scores. It also has among the highest suspension rates in the state. Reporter Dylan Pierce-McCoy says that some parents believe the strict approach means that Paramount isn't working for students with disabilities.
13-year-old Levent goes to an Indianapolis middle school that's been celebrated for its test scores, but he's behind academically. His mom, Shanae, thinks that's because he gets suspended a lot.
Him and another student were caught in the act of fighting in a wrestling position. It sounds kind of like playing around, but yeah, that was the two things.
That's Shanae looking at a suspension report from last fall. We're only using parents' and students' middle names because this story describes how students have been disciplined at school, and it describes their disabilities.
I felt like I was getting suspended for just playing around with my friend.
And that's Levent. He likes football, rap music, and Fortnite. He's been disciplined for safety concerns like leaving campus, and misbehavior like repeatedly disrespecting teachers. Levent has ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, which Shanae says makes him impulsive. She's frustrated by how his school has responded to that impulsiveness.
Why is he getting in trouble for what ADHD looks like?
Records show school staff don't believe all of Levent's misbehavior is related to his disability. Levent's school is part of Paramount Schools of Excellence, an Indiana charter school network. Charter schools are independently managed but publicly funded and free. As a network, it sets discipline policies for all its schools.
When you walk into Paramount, it feels calm.
That's Paramount CEO Tommy Reddix. Among children from low-income families, students at Paramount often outperform their peers on state tests.
We're very much a calm, collected school environment rather than a kind of really jazz you up cheerleading kind of environment.
Parents tell WFYI some students with disabilities struggle to follow the rules that foster those quiet classrooms, and that can get them in trouble. Nationwide, students with disabilities are suspended at far higher rates than their non-disabled peers. If you just look at suspension rates for students with disabilities in Indiana, Paramount students were suspended about 3 times more often than the state average last school year. Reddix says his schools work to avoid suspending students with disabilities, but sometimes suspensions are necessary.
You know, a lot of our special education incidents typically involve safety of others or safety of the students in question.
Reddix says even students who are suspended perform well academically. Still, some experts think of suspensions as little more than a Band-Aid.
Suspensions doesn't fix mess.
Federico Vitoler is a professor of special education at the University of Illinois, Chicago. He says often the people who benefit from suspensions are school staff.
That gets more time maybe to think through things, that has a little breath, and that they don't have to deal with the student next day.
But he says suspending students with disabilities doesn't help them change their behavior.
You're not teaching anything, right? You're saying, don't do this, but you're not telling the student what to do, how to do it, and give them the supports to do it.
Paramount parent Nicole thinks her son, Leon, does learn from suspensions.
You know, he does need to be held accountable because I don't want to say, oh, well, he has autism.
Leon is a 6th grader in a Paramount school this year.
Most of the teachers are really nice. Some of them are strict, but they're not really mean.
Last year was hard for Leon. His grandfather died, his behavior spiraled, and Nicole says he was suspended repeatedly.
He was cussing, and he would rip things up, throw things across the classroom.
Nicole has faced some of the same challenges as Levent's mom, Shanae. But Shanae does not believe suspensions teach her son how to behave. And the cost is steep. Records show Levent's school suspended him for at least 10 days last school year.
I don't want him to get even further behind because, again, this is a kid that's behind.
Levent started his final year of middle school last month, and already Shanae is frustrated by how the school is handling his behavior. She's considering pulling him out. I'm Dylan Pierce-McCoy.
For more on this story, go to our website. That's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Zach Bundy with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you liked today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back on Monday.